emotions as a way to help improve our discernment, but also to understand and look at just the kind of unknowable complexity of interdependence. So all things that we're trying to understand, the causes of, all things we're trying to understand, our implications. Try is the operative word here, do a bit more shamatha tonight. And so for those of you who know, shamatha is attention-focused practice. It's really hard. It's easy to feel unsuccessful. I'll give us a couple different stages and phases of shamatha, and I think that at least 30 seconds of it should work for one of you at some point. I really, as many of you know, I find the benefit of these practices enormously, even though doing them sometimes doesn't give me the same sense of enjoyment and expansion that practices of more clear light awareness or the heart practices can give you, where you kind of have that nice bliss feeling. This is a bit more like you are the Jedi, you're in the Millennium Falcon, you're trying to get to warp speed, and it's like Star Trek, light speed, and it's not working, and you're just like, and yet, as I'll invite us to consider, the motivation for doing the practice is the entire practice. And we're going to be really clear and specific on our motivation. So I hope that that's some solace when inevitably the mind will fall away from its specific object. So with shamatha, what we're really developing is this capacity not only for meta-attention, but also metacognition and meta-awareness. So knowing our mind, familiarizing ourselves with our mind by trying to keep it focused in one place. And when we keep it focused in one place, what we become really clear on is how many other places it would rather be. And that's actually the practice, is really understanding where the mind goes, what it feels like when it goes there, and how we bring it back. So with shamatha, I think people often get the wrong idea, like you're successful if you can maintain and sustain your attention in one place for the longest amount of time possible. Actually, that would make you a pretty good practitioner, I guess, but you wouldn't learn a lot. And on your day-to-day life and interaction, you'd be one of those folks who really couldn't shift over to activities. Right? Our mind's natural migration towards other ideas and other states, it's natural. That is what our mind does when it's on its own. Some of you know the research on the default mode network. If you have someone just sit in an fMRI scanner and do nothing, their mind is all over the place. That's how we operate in the world, nothing wrong with it. This practice gives us an opportunity to really get clear on how much all over the place it is, and to try to kind of develop this granular level of attention, so that when our mind gets caught up in that difficult, painful rumination, we catch ourselves a little bit earlier. Right? And so when our mind gets really seized by aversion or by craving, with this practice, what we're developing is our awareness and our capacity to know that and to feel that. Also, this practice naturally brings us tranquility and calmness. Giving our mind one place to be is naturally relaxing. I don't know if you guys ever had this experience, but I spent one day this weekend where I only had to do one thing. And even though it was hard, I was writing all day. It was so relaxing to do one thing. So in this practice, we're actually refreshing our mind by giving it just one task, albeit a hard task. So that's kind of a little bit of understanding, can we just practice more compassion? Compassion is wonderful. As you know, I love practicing it here, and its benefits are innumerable. However, it doesn't necessarily help us in our shamatha that much. Compassion practice is still a shamatha practice. We are holding one thing in mind. We are trying to keep our mind steadily there. So it is also a shamatha practice, but this is explicit shamatha, just the bare bones. How boring can it get? Follow the breath. That's what we're headed. So you excited? Sounds good, right? Been there, done that. We'll enter in with an arriving practice, and that's one that I think with shamatha, what is a very valuable rule of thumb that I've learned across different traditions is it's kind of funneling in. So we start with a larger field, and we narrow, and we narrow, and we narrow. And in this case, we'll start with a larger field of trying to remember what happened today so that we can arrive here. This is called an arriving practice. And then once we get here, we'll hang out in the entire field of tactile sensation in the body. So what is it like to notice motion, to notice stillness, to notice all the qualities of our body? And then we go even further to just noticing the breath at the belly. So that's our full progression. And in the first part of it, we'll also set that motivation and intention. It reminds us why we do this, why we chose to be here and not anywhere else tonight. So without further ado, I want to welcome you to the San Francisco Dharma Collective. This is a place completely for you. You are here out of the generosity of others who have decided to make this space possible. The core ideals is that you can feel welcome here and that you are included here. And if there's anything that I can do to improve that, please let me know. After, ideally, not during meditation, and maybe not in front of others if that feels awkward, but our goal here is to really appreciate and recognize the multiple identities and differences of people in this room. So when I ask you to communicate with one another, I ask you to do so with a lot of compassion, empathy, and openness for what's shared here. And I am Ekman, not sure if I said that yet. Thank you and welcome. Find your appropriate position to have the least mind-wandering possible, or to embrace your mind-wandering as much as possible. Let's begin by settling into relaxation through the muscles in the face. Inviting a sense of expansion through the forehead and between the brows. Find a melting relaxation through the eyes. And softly release any tension through the cheekbones of the jaw and around the muscles of the lips. You could try out letting your jaw just hang loosely. And inviting a surrender through all the muscles in the face. No need to communicate, no need to receive. You could imagine as though the muscles in the face were similar to that of a sleeping baby, not a care in the world. And settle into the sensations of breath throughout the body. Noticing how the otherwise still body is moved and undulated just by the simple inhale and exhale. Before we begin our practice, I want you to bring to mind your highest aspiration for being here tonight. What is the intention or motivation for practice and community? Imagine both the short and long-term hopes and goals. How will this transform you internally? How will this transform your behaviors, your choices, what you can offer to the world? This is a practice of imagination. Don't hold back. Find a couple phrases that can capture this aspiration. And repeat them to yourselves silently, as though you were saying them directly to your heart. And gently release these aspirations, knowing they are still there, underlying the entire practice. I invite you now to shift your mind and attention, to go back in time to when you first opened your eyes this morning. And in this practice, we imagine as though we could experience the past without getting involved in the past, without going into the story or the narrative, but vividly recalling what was the first thing that we saw when we opened our eyes. What was the quality of light or darkness? What was the quality of mind? Were we already feeling quite awake, or still tired, anxious, or excited? What did it feel like in the body this morning? Then moving ahead in time to some point in the middle of your day. Maybe this was getting lunch or a meeting, doing some task. But choose just one moment you can recall vividly. And once again, notice what was going on around you. Maybe there were other people, or maybe you were alone. What was the quality of mind? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What did it feel like to be in your body in this moment, in the middle of the day? Releasing this moment in time and moving ahead to the hour before you came here. Maybe you were in transit on your way, having food or tea. And again, choose just a single moment. Recall vividly what was going on around you. What were the thoughts or feelings? What was it like in your body? Then moving ahead in time to right when you walked in the door here this evening. What did you see? What did you feel? What did you notice in your body? And then moving ahead in time to this moment. Noticing the quality of light behind closed eyelids. Noticing the quality of mind that's here now. Maybe lethargic and dull, or excited, agitated. Noticing, welcoming whatever is here. And then bringing the full force of your awareness to the body, to the field of tactile sensation. Noticing warmth and coolness. Noticing areas that may feel heavy or tight. Noticing the breath as it slowly and gently moves the belly. Moves the chest. Moves air in and out of the nostrils. Make this noticing quite bright and vivid, while maintaining the relaxation and ease that stillness of the body can bring. Every time your mind gets caught up in a thought, memory, and image, or is carried away with a sound or sensation, simply relax. Release whatever has captured your attention, and return to simply noticing tactile sensations in the body. this noticing, you may find that though the body remains still, there is motion through the breath and through sensations throughout the subtle body and physical body. And while you notice these movements, see if you can rest your awareness in this stillness. We'll now gently shift and narrow the focus, bringing our attention to the belly. Noticing each breath through the inhale and exhale. As the belly rises and falls. Seeing if we can relax completely through the inhale and relax completely through the exhale. Easing into this more focused attention. Excluding all else except for this noticing of the belly rising and falling. behind each breath with your full attention. Each time you get carried away, just rejoice in the noticing. Release, relax, and return. Feel or imagine a freshness, a newness of each breath, as though this one might be a totally unique gift, as though it were the very first breath. Feel or imagine the preciousness, as though this breath could be the very last. Thank you for your practice. Any questions or reflections on that practice? bad as you thought it would be? It's good. You can like start saying it's going to be terrible.
Did you have us doing the actual focusing on the breath for very long?
Yeah. Really. We did it, you know, with the body and the breath.
Yeah.
And then here, both are shots.
Seemed really short.
Great.
Because I'm the one that wants the compassion meditation all the time.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's good. Yeah. I mean, it's all good, but that is also good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I'm trying to get to the breathing place, a big difference for me this time is something that I've been angry at was allowed to come, but in a calm manner. So I've been upset and angry at the situation, but it kept coming, and I'm like, go away, I just want to breathe. But it was calm. So it was still there, but it shifted in its nature, which was nice.
That's great. Yeah, I think, again, there's this misconception that things should just go away when we practice, and they don't. So it's nice if they're calm. And if they're not calm, it's okay too. You know, even if our practice completely is, you know, 95% rumination on wanting it to be different, just the like coming back is great. But it's nice to notice that, you know, the kind of poignancy of it got a little softer. It's great. Anyone else? Yeah.
And this really strong sensation in my head, and I was trying to follow the instructions of the breath, and I was just like, it was getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and then I was like, Pam, you can just pay attention to the sensation in your head.
Yeah.
Even if Eve's over there trying to get you to do the breath thing.
Yeah.
And it just like really, and then I just did that, and it just was like,
Awesome.
and I was like, and then it was this like sensation of head and breath, and that was fine.
Yeah. Is that a cold or just like who knows some kind of?
No, this is the head, like so have attention paid to it. It's a sensation. It's not anything else.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Anybody willing to share your motivation, intention for being here? Is it hard to come up with? Did it come quickly? Did it feel authentic? Yeah.
Well, it was not the same as all, it was just for tonight. Just what came was like to be of service and to stop reacting. I was like, oh, that's kind of a big, it's like, well, that's what the came at? Stop reacting, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But that, and I kind of started getting a story about that, and I was just like, no, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's an intention.
Yeah.
Maybe a lofty one, but it's an intention.
Yeah. I really believe in this like imaginative.
Yeah, and then you said something about like, let it, you know it, and I was like, okay, stop reacting, just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, mine is like to be free. Right. That's huge.
It's kind of the same, it's very similar.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it feels, it does, I don't know your experience, but for me it feels very like buoyant to have that. It feels really, it doesn't make me feel like, God, that's stupid, why did you think that? It's like, wow, that's maybe a possibility. Maybe. Anyone else? Intention? How often do you guys set an intention when you sit? Every time? Yeah. It's incredibly important. And I myself sometimes fall into reciting or repeating the one intention. I'm very familiar with repeating the Bodhisattva vow. And sometimes it's good for me even just to mix it up so it doesn't become too rote or too similar. Yeah. Anyone else willing to share intention or motivation? Or question on why to do this intention or motivation?
I'll just say, it's, when I very first started practicing in the Mahayana, Vajrayana tradition, and it's like I never had a teacher ever leave sit where intention was left out. Like, in fact, I think I was taught it was probably the most important, and then never had a sit where the merit wasn't dedicated, and it's something I've missed deeply in the Vipassana world.
Yeah,
So I just want to say that I really appreciate that you have us do it.
yeah.
And I like also the lofty, I don't know what, sometimes you've said like, you say the long term and the short term.
Yeah.
And sometimes I read that is like I love the Bodhisattva vow, and I have various sort of ways of saying it, but like, then like today I've just been putting myself through some pretty major suffering.
Yeah.
And so like, how am I gonna be a Bodhisattva if I'm like mired in negativity and then beating the shit out of myself and being mired in negativity? So when you say that, it's helpful to like, because otherwise I feel like I'm not allowed to do a personal intention. Like,
Yeah.
it's too selfish.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the flexibility of that, both are coming from compassion,
Yeah.
right? And this book, it just literally all roads lead to compassion. Every single part of this book, it's like, and compassion. Did I mention compassion? And it's really nice to think about what that's like if it's like really underneath your motivation. It can look like so many different things. So my aspiration in the short term is to be slightly less mean to myself for the next hour, right? And then my long term is, wow, may I find a way to really hold the love that's given to me, or may I find a way to truly transform the suffering of other people. Be lofty, big, or beautiful. And I do think it evolves, right? Even if it has that core piece of it, it can evolve and become sometimes clearer, or maybe there's a certain thing we're working on for a couple decades that needs our attention, or even a couple months. So it's nice to keep it fresh. Yeah. So we're going to do just a little bit more on forgiveness, because we were just at the juicy part of self-forgiveness last week, which I was saying I find it really sweet that the Dalai Lama just automatically assumes that we're all good at that. He's like, we can forgive others because it's so easy to forgive ourselves. And I'm like, okay. And it's also humbling and I think good to know that this isn't necessarily part of his lived experience or part of what he understood culturally. And I've mentioned this before, but there's a famous meeting in, I think it's 1994, maybe 98, with Sharon Salzberg, Joseph Goldstein, a lot of these modern teachers with the Dalai Lama. And Sharon Salzberg saying this whole piece about how she's translating the teachings, and her kind of throwaway comment at the end is, yeah, we do a lot of self-compassion because people hate themselves. And then the Dalai Lama and Alan Wallace, who's his translator at the time, have this like lengthy discussion. The Dalai Lama turns to all the monks in the room, lengthy discussion. He comes back and he's like, you guys hate yourselves? And all of the teachers, look at each other and like, well, yeah, that's kind of common. And he's like, compassion, right? Just absolutely. And so we still see that he hasn't totally understood that or adopted it, because when he says here, we naturally forgive ourselves and perhaps resolve not to do the same thing again. But given that we find it so easy to forgive ourselves, surely we can extend the same courtesy to others. I was like, oh, I like that you think I could do that. That makes me, I appreciate your faith in me. And so I really was thinking about what self-forgiveness looks like. And for those of you who weren't here last week, we had just really beautiful conversation and investigation of how compassion and forgiveness are the same. And often the way that we think of forgiveness is a bit more contingent than how we think of our compassion. Like, yeah, we're willing to forgive when the other person recognizes that they did something wrong. Right? We're willing to forgive, but only if it's something that's acceptable or allowable. And this idea of compassion, irrespective of whether that person deserves it in your point of view, whether or not you are feeling as though they are appropriately repentant for what they did, right? It would be great, and it is nice to forgive someone when they ask you for forgiveness, when they recognize they've harmed you or done wrong. That happens. Like what % of the time? Half if
Not
we're
even.
lucky,
Yeah.
right? And that's still hard. That's still hard. We totally regress. I'm just like leaning into the holiday season so make it even more real, right? So you think you've forgiven someone, let's say in your family, then it's the holiday gathering. You're put to the ultimate forgiveness test and you realize you actually haven't forgiven them. You've forgiven an idea of them who deserves our compassion or deserves our forgiveness. So one of the things he says around forgiveness, and I love this quote, and this could be whether or not we're talking about forgiveness for others or ourselves. Clinging to painful memories and harboring ill will do nothing to rectify the wrong committed. It will have no positive effect on you. Your peace of mind will be destroyed, your sleep will be disturbed, and eventually your physical health is likely to suffer. If, on the other hand, you're able to overcome your feelings of hostility towards wrongdoers, including yourself, and forgive them, there's an immediate and perceptible benefit to you. So it's, very reminiscent of the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life that we were reading earlier this year, of the freedom and peace that we get from releasing the blame and, in some ways, aggression towards others and ourselves. Maybe first ourselves. I don't know, it's really easy to say something kind of that sounds so beautiful as, you can't forgive anyone until you forgive yourself. I'm not sure if that's true. I like the sound of it, but I do know that forgiving oneself is really difficult. And it's not just these big things, it's on the day-to-day. The ways that we feel we could have done more or should have done more. And I feel that the flavor of forgiveness, or the flavor, I guess, of blame or criticism or self-negativity, is a lot more like judgment than often we're thinking about the ways we need to forgive others. It's stronger. They've done harm. And for us, it's often this way that we are judging the quality of, or impact of, or benefit of something we have done or not done. And what does it actually palpably feel like to forgive oneself for just even the smallest thing? I'm hoping we can do a little bit of an experiential exercise with this. So I'm going to ask you to do that dreaded thing of talk to another person. Some of you still come back, even though I make people do this, so thank you. And it'll be pretty guided in that I really want us to kind of adopt a style of really communicating specifically about this one topic at a time. So the questions will be, the first one will be a silent one, in which you don't speak to the other person, about what can we forgive ourselves for. That's something I want you to consider. Again, you can go big if you want, but you can also keep it small. I noticed yesterday that I was on a hard, awesome roll of being really not that kind to myself from about 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then when I realized it, I had a hard time forgiving myself for being hard on myself. It's been like, it's okay that you were, having these ruminations and doubt and frustration, like, that's okay. And so it's interesting. It can be small, it can be big. But then what I'll ask you to share with another is, what does looking at this feeling of forgiveness to yourself, what could that show you about forgiving others? Then what does it feel like, just at the embodied level, to forgive yourself? And what can you gain from that? And the way that we'll do this is a lot more like a meditation. So I tried this approach specifically when I was teaching in Brazil, and it's a nice way to kind of hold us a bit more just to the questions. So I will ask the questions, you will respond to at least those last three, and then I'll ask the next question. So instead of you going and answering them all together, we'll do them step by step. So I invite you to find someone near you who you know or don't know, and briefly introduce yourself and turn towards that person. There is always a right to pass, should you so like.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Does anyone not have a partner or wants a partner?
It's
Yeah.
Mario.
Hi, buddy.
That'll be hard.
What's up? You are happy
Are
here?
you willing to participate? Interested?
It's a nice meditation, no?
Are you happy here?
Yep. It's a good
If
place
you're
for
in a group of
meditation.
three, then one person won't get to go. So it'll be an observer. Okay. So whoever is wearing more jewelry will start. If you're not wearing any jewelry, whoever's wearing more items of clothes.
I think I'm wearing more jewelry.
Yes. So once you've figured out who that person is, please just close your eyes. Get back to the breath. Refine your intention briefly, allowing it to give you some support and courage. Reminding yourself for what purpose this work is. And then taking a moment and finding, if possible, just one thing where you could use some more forgiveness for yourself. Maybe this is a whole area of your life, something you've been working on. Maybe this is something that just happened today. The key is finding the area in which you're trying to deny or put away or finding the wrong in some way of being. Of course, we make mistakes and we do wrong. But this is one of those sticky areas where instead of recognizing, changing, we're holding tight, fixating. Noticing what, if any, sensations in the body arise as we consider this. And feel or imagine that you have as much space as needed for these sensations. And gently blinking your eyes open. And considering this first question, what does it feel like to consider forgiving ourselves for this? And please use words that describe the body, the mind, emotions, and I will ring the bell when we bring that to a stop.
Liberating. Sort of like butterflies and stuff. Spacious.
Gently finishing up responses to this one. Then coming back to closing the eyes for just a moment. Noticing if there's any shift or change in the sensations in the body. And inviting in a quality of compassion for whatever is the experience. Whatever the cause, whatever the reason, all the myriad factors that lead towards this difficulty, this thing we don't want to or can't accept. Just lightly and gently opening up around it with love and compassion. To do this at a cognitive level brings up far too many thoughts and ideas. See if you can, at a body level, relax, release. And gently blinking your eyes back open. Now I want you to reflect on what does trying to forgive oneself show you about trying to forgive others? finishing up your last sentence. Coming back into closed eyes, inward. Again, just noticing if anything has shifted in the body, in the mind, the quality of the mind. We're going to switch partners to answer the last two questions. So just sitting here, if you were the speaker, feeling appreciation for being heard. And if you were the listener, feeling appreciation for the generosity of what was shared. And gently opening the eyes once again. And now the speaker will answer the question of what is the opposite of feeling forgiveness? What happens in the place of forgiveness towards yourself and others?
What was the question again?
What is the opposite of forgiveness? What happens when we are not forgiving towards ourselves and others?
This is the new speaker.
New speaker.
Yes.
Slowly start bringing your last thoughts to a close. Turn your eyes back towards. And once again, come back to the body, to the breath. And consider for one moment the possibility that there was enough compassion in your heart and in your mind to forgive everything. Just inhale and exhale, imagining that possibility. To receive life with open hands. To lose with open hands. Not grasping, not pulling, and not pushing. Feel or imagine the bliss of blamelessness. And gently coming back. And the new speaker describing what it would feel like to have this kind of forgiveness. What would be gained? What would be experienced to be able to completely forgive? Finishing up with your last thoughts here. Coming back towards silence. And if you were the speaker this time, just feeling or imagining some gratitude of being listened to, witnessed and observed. And if you were the listener, feel or imagine feeling of appreciation towards the generosity of what was shared. And gently open your eyes and thank your partner. And come back here. Thank you all for your willingness. What did you learn that was new, if anything, in reflecting on forgiveness in that way? Or what surprised you?
Surprised me that I don't forgive.
Yeah,
Really surprising.
yeah. Yourself or others, or both?
More others.
More others. Okay, well, good insight. Yeah. Is there a ongoing interest in that? Are you curious?
Yeah. I think that I should be thinking how to change that
Yeah.
in myself. Because maybe I won't be able to change it in anybody.
For sure. Yeah.
So it's me who has to really let go and forgive
Yeah.
and become really soft.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love that word, softness or gentleness. It seems like the antidote. And forgiveness feels like the opposite of that hard and keeping you out of what I think is right or good. Yeah. Thank you for that. Anybody else realize that they have a hard time forgiving? Maybe you already knew? Yeah.
I have a hard time forgiving.
Yeah.
Especially tonight, I'm very physically restless. I'm not comfortable at all.
Yeah.
And I'm finding it hard to focus on forgiveness.
Yeah.
So do I have to forgive my body for
Yeah. Yes.
being,
Yeah, there's like no end. I mean, yeah, in a way, like having a hard time in the dyad is even more good generative capacity for your forgiveness. You know, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. And again, like when we go underneath into the roots of forgiveness practice, like what's in the way of forgiveness? What's in the way? Yes, righteousness. It's you that it should be different from me, right? But God, it's so tiresome. Yeah. I actually get slightly nauseated when I think about it. Honestly, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for that kind of in the moment, like when you're with somebody, and it's usually somebody you know very well, at least for me it is, and it's like where it's somebody's digging in more and more and getting to that righteous space. Like I've tried kind of like more empathy, more compassion, but it gets to a point where I'm just kind of like, I feel like I'm just like dumping into this like endless
Right.
pit,
Yeah.
you know, but so it's just like, but maybe you keep doing that and eventually it kind of stops it up, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any kind of in the moment practices that you find helpful.
So the situation is wanting to feel forgiveness, but this familiar person continues to kind of do things that are harmful or at least unpleasant.
And kind of has that weird kind of like righteous.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I think, compassion can be great, probably for yourself as opposed to that person, right? Because the compassion you're giving to them is almost like it's giving more effort and feeding in towards that which is already draining you. So I think we sometimes forget that kind of self-protective. I think it must have been John Kabat-Zinn who said, like, air mask on yourself first, then the child.
Right.
And he's talking about it for mindfulness, but I think for compassion, maybe even more so. Especially if we are feeling like, because forgiveness isn't for just when someone has, again, repented or is doing well. It's for like when they're still being annoying or difficult, and yet there's no recourse. At that moment, there's not a greater distance we can create from them. There's not necessarily a immediate action that wouldn't be more harmful, right? So then we're forced to ask, well, what can I do right now to just be here? And as Shantideva says, be like wood. Right? Our only aspiration at that moment is to not react, because that'll make it worse for ourselves and for that person. And like being like wood always feels very metaphorical to me until I actually try it. I'm like, oh yeah, this, and the way I experience it, and wood isn't this way, but I experience it as being able to create more space. Because when you're in that contracted experience of feeling, whether it's frustrated or anxious or lonely, it really like seals around you, and there's just not access to any other information, including the information that this isn't going to last forever and this person isn't always bad. So like what can create some sense of space or gentleness in that moment? And that might just be focusing on your kneecaps, focusing on your feet, going somewhere totally neutral. So instead of the effortful, right? So it could be self-compassion and being like, this sucks for me, this is hard. But that could get us down the, why are they, I wish they weren't, why am I here? So maybe something neutral, or just something so kind, just something so kind to oneself. But that's the million-dollar question. All of us, right, in our practice are like, but what about those difficult, disturbing emotions, right? How do I work with those? And I do think it's not as though it's just in the moment that we practice. We develop our awareness of what it feels like when we're feeling contracted or upset. We try to understand them in some greater way. And in the moment, it could be so many different tools. So like I gave you some ideas, but you might find that actually I'm focusing on this painting behind their head, and that's really working. Whatever creates space. But I think that idea of like space around the feeling might be a good orientation. Let me know how it goes.
Oh well. It might come up again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I have a family member in a very intense situation. I'm really proud of myself because it's been closed for very long, but since I've been coming here, I've been feeling this openness, and I got him tonight to go to a meeting in LA of Dharma.
Oh, nice.
And he's never been. I just made a suggestion, and to me, everything you're saying, it's like, at least when he goes, he'll be leaving the angst behind and going to something new. That's it. That's how I see it. But I'm really proud that he could have said no, but he took me up on it.
Yeah.
And I just said it's been helping me.
Yeah.
And it's been really positive.
Yeah.
I know there's one where you are. Why don't you go check it out? And he did. He's here at the same time.
Beautiful.
Elsewhere.
And as always reminded to us, give up all hope of fruition, right? Who knows how to go?
Of
Yet,
course.
it's beautiful to have that feeling for yourself, especially of spiritual confidence. This is working for me, and that is how many people have tried to convince friends or family members. Yeah. Sometimes it works out the way we want, And then
It
sometimes we're
doesn't
like,
matter, but he's, has
exactly.
this distraction for this
Yeah.
period of time.
Yeah, yeah, and it's nice to know that whatever is working for you is obvious to them. Like that's how, I think that's a beautiful indication. So, great. Yeah, back in the front, yeah.
I felt, yeah, this was really hard. It was hard to feel forgiveness in my body. But eventually, the one little thing that got in there was when I started saying, in terms of self-forgiveness, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry it's been this way. And that went in. And yeah, the last few days I've been really concentrating on some character traits that I want to let go of that don't serve me. So
Yeah,
I want, and then it's like looking at my whole life and the sadness, like
yes.
all the suffering that, you know, and so I was like, I'm sorry. And then, but that helped me eventually like to think, okay, with other people that I have such high expectations like I do in myself, like to remember, things have been hard for them too.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
remember that, like just hold that. It's tough out there,
Yeah.
you know, not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. The thing they don't tell you when you start doing practice is that you're going to become totally aware of all of the ways your obstacles are. You see so plainly kind of what isn't working and what could be let go of, and yet it's so hard to do it. So we need so much forgiveness for ourselves, so much compassion right alongside of just seeing this habit, this pattern, this way of being over and over and over, and still loving it, and still being like that gentle and that tender. So, yeah, thank you.
Can you just hold the mic a little, put it a
Yes.
little closer to you? Yeah, something
It was
like
good
that.
before.
Okay, I know.
Thank you.
I forgive it, but it was slipped out of place.
So, talk a little bit about what the connection is. I feel like there's a connection between forgiveness and forgetting. You know, sometimes I find that it's hard to forgive because I don't want to forget.
That's really interesting. You know, I'm like, as I've mentioned here before, I'm nerding out on memory these days. It's just such a fascinating way of understanding emotion. And absolutely our high potency or high valence emotional events, we remember. And each time we remember them, we reinstantiate remembering them. Right.
What?
Instantiate, it's just
Like
nerdy.
you just dig it in a little deeper.
Yeah. Right, you're like retracing in a way that same kind of high valence. Right, you know, you bring it up, and as we know here, when we remember things that are hard, it doesn't matter that it's not right now, we're experiencing it. So we bring up that memory of it hard, and we just further fortify. And so that's, you know, the classic grudge, right? We don't want to let it go. And again, as was said, what's at the root of it? Righteousness, right? There was a sense of isolated, fixed, permanent self for us, and then whoever that other person or being or entity or system or organization or political entity is, right? It's always that way, and I'm always this way. So I think it's, you know, the invitation for us is to see, like, we don't even need to get to the details, but there's no way that that situation is completely known to me. You know, there's stuff I don't know. And that gives it a little space. And then hopefully with the space, there's a little less need to continually hold, right? And you're right, if we aren't continually holding, we will forget. One of our best, abilities as humans is forgetting. Otherwise, we would never make it. All my friends who have more than one kid, they're like, how did I forget? This is impossibly hard. Why did I do this again? It's adaptive for our species to forget, and we can. We can also keep it in there, but it's the re-triggering. You can think of it that way. And so getting underneath the belief or the fixed idea that we're right. Thank you.
But that's totally true about the good too,
Of course, we don't do it enough. We can
right?
totally, what's called savoring, right, is we can completely reinstantiate the good. Just a study came out last week on remembering one kind thing. Had a huge effect. I think we're going to cover it in the greater good next week, so keep your eye out. But, I mean, it's like amazing. We were laughing at the editorial meeting, like, one good thing remembered? Like, that's what we're working with? All right. But it's nice to know even that can make an impact on our overall psychological well-being. Remembering one good thing that happened.
Each day, or just in general?
You know, I didn't read the full abstract. I was like at the meeting, kind of spacing out.
There's some good meditations on abiding, is what, right? Very similar.
Yeah, and abiding and like just but you know what's interesting is I think of abiding as not stimulus driven. It's like in the goodness. And then this is really like, you can evoke a stimulus, but even though it's not really in front of you, and abide in that. So I do think you can like cross over or carry over the abiding, but you don't even, like with abiding, you don't need the object to focus. And that's so beautiful. Then you're really seeing the intrinsic wellspring of goodness that's just here. And until then, we use the training wheels of remembering something kind. And training wheels are great. Like, we need them, especially if we're stressed out, which we all are. Yeah.
I'm really struggling with the idea that I don't seem to have a lot of problem feeling compassion for someone else, but I'm really struggling to feel it for myself. And how does that work together, that I can let go of anger and resentment and just accept that someone is struggling and they're doing the best they can, but I don't have the same kind of compassion for myself.
Yeah.
I shared that completely.
Me too.
Get out of my mouth.
Yes, yeah, let's double hands up.
I've even had this experience of like sharing my inability to just like let go of this judgment of myself, and my boyfriend was like, you should be nicer to my girlfriend, right? He was talking about me, that I should be nicer to myself, and I'm like, holy shit, like I beat myself up for just being human and fallible.
Yeah.
So why can I not feel the same level of compassion for myself that I do for others?
Yeah, what do you think?
I don't know.
Anyone have an idea?
Oh, yeah. I've been working with this a lot lately. I think, at least for me, I think that I learned at an early age to, because there were so many things going on in my environment that I didn't understand, and so many reactions happening, that I was constantly looking like, okay, what did I do to cause this? I must have done something, so I was always searching for some kind of culpability. And so what I've been discovering is now anytime there's a reaction in the world around me, like it could be anything, my mind immediately, because I've been really working on this, it goes to like if somebody didn't text me back about something, I had sent them, I actually wanted to know about self-forgiveness, and I had sent them information about self-forgiveness, and said, oh, we should get together and have coffee and chat about it sometime, and they didn't text me back. And I was like, okay, maybe my text wasn't like kind enough. Fuck, did I like, shoot, maybe they think maybe I should have called, and I was like, whoa, here I go again. And I mean, that's just like a small example, but so I just stopped and I was like, you didn't do any, like I've just been having to catch it. Like that's what I've been working on, just catching it, because it seems like a real habit. Yeah. And I think he talks about it a little bit in that book. Yeah. So I just caught it and I was like, I didn't do anything. And if I did, like hopefully the world, I can forgive me, this person can forgive me. And my intention was good. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's what I've been doing, but it's just like my little baby steps.
And I think that that looking deeply into the probably false belief that there's something different or wrong or separate about us. And that can come from so many different ways, right? And it is that whole fantasy that we are somehow different. And that can sometimes feed our ego, like I'm different and great. But the very other side of pride is insufficiency and insecurity. And it's still the focus on self as being somehow different than all those people who deserve our love. And I remember really like blowing my mind the first time I heard it, and yet I need to hear it all the time. That like both of them are false views. You being amazing and you being terrible. And one of them might be more familiar to us, right? But they're all based in some idea like we're different, that we're separate. When literally everything from the biological sciences to physics to psychology suggests that we are absolutely not separate or different. And not that I'm you or you're me, we're just not that different. And so I love what your boyfriend said, and I think it's a really nice, like, sometimes you gotta really outsource the compassion. How would I treat my boyfriend? How would I treat, my dear friend? And just start practicing it. Because if it's not a familiar pathway, it is very awkward and weird. And it'll probably even feel not natural, And I'll be like, I am deserving of love. Ugh. I'm deserving of love, right? Or it might even be finding it just through the simple things you already do for yourself, like washing your hair, making yourself a cup of tea, and taking that in as evidence of the way that you're loving yourself now. So instead of starting with the like, I don't do this at all, and I'm bad at it, finding like, I do it in some ways. These other ways I struggle. So then we start kind of like capitalizing on the momentum that's already there. And like, as you see in the room, you're so not alone in this. You're so not alone. And we have a really, for many of us who suffer with that feeling of not generating or sustaining or being able to always find that self-compassion, giving it to others, it feels really good. We're naturally hardwired for our altruism, for our caring. And it does give us like dopamine. It feels good. And so that's it's great. It's a good thing that it feels good to help others. And it's also important to be able to do that for ourselves. It doesn't negate the good you give to others. It doesn't mean you do it in a bad way. Like, oh, I feel compassion for them, but not for myself, so it's probably bad. Nope. Just more like, how can I just start funneling that towards myself? And whatever it takes. It might be like writing it, it might be saying it, hand on the heart, song that makes you feel loved. Whatever methods, just start practicing deliberately until it becomes reflexive. And then let me know how it goes. It's habit, just as you said, it's the habit of putting ourselves down. So we just, instead of trying to get rid of that habit, we build another one.
Yes, I'm even having to do it right now. I'm like, oh, your example was not helpful.
Your example
you probably made that person feel bad. It's like, your example was fine.
Yeah.
You like it, but it's like constant. For me, it's constant.
But I think the key point that I really love from Kristen Neff, who's like a self-compassion researcher, is the opposite of self-compassion of low self-esteem isn't high self-esteem. Yeah. It's just authentically seeing yourself. So it's not like, oh, I'm so hard on myself. I am awesome, actually. I'm the best. No, that's not real. It doesn't feel real. It's just another ego project. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not as bad as I think I am. I'm just as good or bad as everybody else. Good place to start.
I mean, it really works, the practice of it. I find for me, I've practiced this a lot. And it's allowed me to soften a lot around myself. Yeah. And I totally encourage anyone to practice it in whatever way. Like, I had to find the way that worked for me. Yeah. And I mean, I must have spent years just, every night, like, for real. I mean, you can ask Mace, like, whatever, I would look at this particular image, like, every night and just try to believe every night. And, like, I could probably spend some more time doing that practice, in fact, but it's made a tangible difference in the way that I feel about myself, and it's such a gift.
And the way you are in the world.
Such a gift.
Outside observer.
Super
data.
She might be biased though, I don't know.
You guys, we are so far over. I'm really sorry. I know. It's juicy. We didn't get anywhere near discernment. But we will next week. And I just want to sprinkle this in before I came today. I was with Tig O'Malley. Some of you guys may remember we did an event here. We're going to do something so awesome the night before Thanksgiving. Sorry if you're out of town. If you're in town, stay tuned. It is going to include both some kind of like healthy sharing of food, but also intentional practices of art and looking at how we can use kind of the reverence and enjoyment of the goodness in others as our gratitude practice. So once we have a write-up, we'll share it. But great to see you all. See you next week. And let's dedicate the merit really quickly. Oh. May all beings know the causes and conditions that support their happiness. May all beings find the capacity for forgiveness of themselves deeply and of others. May this work that we do here tonight together be a service for those most beautiful aspirations and all others we brought here this evening. May all beings, including us, be free.
And may all be generously give Donna.
Yes, may all beings keep this place afloat with your generosity and volunteering. Volunteering is the noble work.
Come chat with me about it for this.
Yes.
Or no, or